How's it going, everybody? Daner here with North Central Coins, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the most rare and valuable coins in Canada. Today, we're diving into a list of coins that quite literally shouldn't even exist, some of the rarest Canadian mule and pattern coins. Now, these are shocking minting errors that slipped into circulation. They could have the wrong obverse or reverse designs, mismatched dies, or even struck on the completely wrong type of planchet, creating colors and appearances that instantly stand out. Some of these mistakes are so wild that you will wonder how they ever slipped past the mint. Just about all of these pieces could easily be considered unicorns or holy grails in the numismatic realm, as only a handful of them have been found, and they are usually discovered in circulation or by accident, and have sold for buku amounts of money at auction. And if you know what to look for, one might just be hiding in your collection, coin jar, or an old bankroll. Before we do get into this, I would really appreciate if you guys would smash that thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and also ring that bell notification so you don't miss out on any of my latest videos. And make sure to stick around until the end of the video. The last few coins on this list are absolute monsters when it comes to rarity and value. And then without any further ado, let's get into it and take a look at the top 10 Canadian mule or pattern coins. Let's get it, guys. Most Canadian coin collectors are familiar with the iconic 12-sided nickels that began appearing in the year 1942, but very few know the story of an incredibly rare prototype that came before them, a coin that was never meant to be seen by public eyes and that almost no one has actually held in person. This coin is known as the 1942 pattern 5-cent coin, or by its Charlton catalog designation DC-25. This elusive test piece was created by the Canadian Mint as part of an experimental effort to revolutionize Canadian coinage during one of the most tumultuous periods in modern history, World War II. One of the key reasons for the Canadian Mint switching to a 12-sided shape for nickels in 1942 was to prevent confusion between coin denominations. During World War II, nickel as a metal was urgently needed for the war effort, so the mint replaced it with Tombac, a copper-zinc alloy that had a golden bronze color, almost identical to Canadian pennies at the time. To avoid the public, bank tellers, or merchants mistaking Tombac nickels for 1-cent coins, the mint introduced the distinctive 12-sided or dodecagonal shape. This new design helped Canadians quickly distinguish nickels from pennies by feel and appearance. Even after Tombac was phased out in 1944 and replaced with chrome-plated steel, the 12-sided shape remained until the year 1963 when Canadian nickels finally returned to their round form. At first glance, the 1942 pattern nickel could resemble the familiar Tombac nickel that entered circulation the same year, but in reality it is a completely different coin. This piece was struck in pure nickel rather than the copper zinc alloy known as Tombac, and it was never intended for public distribution or to be released in collector sets. The 1942 pattern nickel DC-25 was produced in vanishingly small numbers solely to evaluate the feasibility of a 12-sided coin shape. This dodecagonal form would go on to define the look of Canadian nickels for the next 21 years, making the pattern coin somewhat of an origin piece in Canadian numismatics. To fully understand why this pattern nickel was created, we need to go back to the year 1942. At this time, Canada was fully engaged in World War II, and nickel as a metal was deemed as a strategic war resource. It was needed in large quantities for use in armor plating, aircraft engines, and other military-grade materials. The Canadian government, in partnership with the Canadian Mint, began phasing out nickel from coinage in favor of more abundant and less strategically valuable metals. The first nickels issued for general circulation in 1942 were round versions that were struck in nickel, and these were issued early in the year before the changeover to Tombac. And then eventually, the 12-sided Tombac nickels began to make their way into circulation later in 1942 as well. But before the mint could move forward with mass producing this new 12-sided Tombac coin, it had to conduct internal tests to ensure that the new shape could be struck reliably, used effectively in vending machines, and was generally accepted by the Canadian public. The mint needed a prototype, a test piece with the proposed new shape, but from the original nickel material to evaluate how the new design would perform under real-world conditions. And that is how these 1942 pattern nickels came into existence. The pattern nickel DC-25 is notable for several reasons that elevate it far beyond an ordinary collector piece. First and foremost, it is one of Canada's earliest and rarest pattern coins. These types of coins are generally produced in extremely limited numbers and are used only internally at mints to test the designs, alloys, and shapes before they go into full production. Unlike the Tombac 12-sided nickels that did reach circulation, this coin retained the original nickel composition, resulting in a silvery appearance as opposed to the golden bronze hue of the Tombac coins. These pattern pieces were not meant to be saved or collected. They were intended for internal evaluation only, and the vast majority were likely destroyed once the testing was concluded. However, a few examples, possibly fewer than a dozen, somehow escaped destruction. Whether through employee souvenir keeping, mishandling, or intentional preservation, these coins found their way into private collections or institutional archives, where they have since become mythical treasures in Canadian numismatics. If you ever come across a strange-looking 1942 Canadian nickel, here's how you might miraculously recognize one of these pattern coins. First, you want to take a look at the shape. The coin must be dodecagonal, so it will have 12 distinct flat edges. This dodecagonal shape was introduced in 1942, but was only used in circulation for the Tombac nickel. You then want to take a look at the metal composition and color of the coin. Unlike the golden tone of the Tombac nickels, the pattern version is struck in nickel, which will give it a silver hue similar to the round nickels in 1942. You then want to check the weight and size. This coin will weigh 5.5 grams and will measure 23.62 millimeters in diameter. Due to its ultra-limited production and high historical significance, the 1942 pattern nickel commands exceptionally high valuables at auction. Even lower grade examples are extremely coveted, but those in specimen 62 condition or better can bring in over $10,000. Some in high-grade conditions, like SP65, have fetched prices approaching or even exceeding $20,000 Canadian. One thing that you have to keep in mind is that virtually none of these coins are accessible to the average collector. Most known examples are tucked away in museum collections or held tightly by elite collectors or investors. It's estimated that somewhere between 10 to 12 examples exist in private hands, making this one of the rarest and most desirable 5-cent coins ever produced in Canada. Even though most collectors, coin roll hunters, or numismatists will never encounter this coin in person, the 1942 pattern nickel represents a critical turning point in Canadian minting history. And not only marks the transition to the iconic 12-sided nickel, a design that would define the denomination for over 2 decades, but it also showcases the kind of wartime adaptability that shaped Canadian industry and innovation during the 1940s. Coins like the 1942 test piece DC-25 remind us that numismatics aren't just about collecting money, it's about collecting stories, moments in history, and forgotten artifacts. So if you are ever lucky enough to encounter a strange-looking 1942 nickel, perhaps in a dusty old coin box, a misidentified estate lot, or coin roll hunting, take a look closely, because you might just be staring at a 6-figure piece of Canadian coinage history. In April of 1998, the Canadian Mint initiated the Millennium Coin Design Contest, inviting Canadians from all walks of life to contribute their creative visions to a set of 24 commemorative quarters symbolizing each month for the years 1999 and 2000. This ambitious contest aimed to encapsulate Canada's rich heritage and aspirations for the future through numismatic artistry. The designs for the 1999 quarters were intended to reflect upon the nation's past, while those for the year 2000 were oriented towards envisioning its future. Notably, the 1999 coins were inscribed with their retrospective month of issue, whereas the 2000 coins bore thematic labels representative of their themes. To culminate the turn of the millennium, the Canadian Mint issued this distinctive series of 12 commemorative 25-cent coins for circulation, additionally releasing them in different sets, some struck with a frosted cameo proof in sterling silver. These coins were encased within an elegant oval display case, and each coin in this special set embodies a significant aspect of Canada's illustrious history. The 1999 Millennium Quarter series unfolds a narrative of Canada's diverse cultural tapestry and storied past through 12 evocative designs. From A Country unfolds in January to This Is Canada in December, each month's quarter portrays a distinctive facet of the nation's identity. These coins serve not only as numismatic treasures, but also as reminders of the collective experiences and aspirations that define the Canadian spirit. At some point during the inception of production for the 1999 September 25-cent coins, an unanticipated twist emerged, and that was the utilization of the Obverse die that was designated for the regular Caribou 25-cent coins. This departure from the norm instigated the creation of a series of rare mule coins that would captivate collectors and enthusiasts alike. Amidst the creation process, a select number of these unconventional coins that are dubbed mules found their way into circulation. However, the primary destination for these mule coins was within uncirculated coin sets. It is speculated that certain mule coins might have ventured beyond the confines of these sets, potentially entering the hands of unsuspecting members of the public. This dispersion only adds to the intrigue surrounding these rare and elusive coins. Now, there were a few different sets released in 1999 to commemorate this Millennium series of quarters. There was one released in sterling silver, and then there was one released in just a base cardboard holder, and the coins are not anything special. They're basically just considered brilliant uncirculated, and there is really no way to tell them apart from their standard circulation counterparts. Now, for anyone seeking to discern whether they possess one of these rare mule coins, there exists telltale signs that set them apart. The most notable clue is that these mule coins do not feature the usual 25 cents written on the obverse of the Millennium series coins. Now, if you are to find one of these mule coins, your best chances is going to be to pull it from one of the sets issued in the same year. After the year 1977, Canadian numismatists refer to coins pulled out of these sets as NBU, or newly brilliant uncirculated specimens. NBU simply means that the coins were freshly minted and handled with extra care and then placed into these sets, which preserves their pristine condition straight from the mint, but there is nothing that sets them apart from the standard circulation counterparts. But it would seem when it comes to a lot of these holy grail mule coins that your best chances of finding them is to pull them out of the sets. And in the case of the 1999 Millennium sets, you want to look for the oval cardboard set that contains the Millennium series quarters. Now, just because these coins typically originate from mint sets doesn't mean that you can't ever stumble upon one in the wild. There is a small possibility that you could find one of these rare mules mixed in with standard business strikes. Now, how does that happen? Well, mint sets are often opened by collectors eager to examine their contents. Also, sometimes when coin collectors are strapped for cash, they will take their less valuable sets and crack them open and cash them in for face value. And one thing that I can personally attest, which is pretty sad, is I got the 1999 and 2000 Millennium sets when I was a kid. I was only 9 and 10 years old when these sets were released, and at some point when I was 14 or 15 years old, I cashed them in probably to buy some sandwiches or food from the corner store. Now, you would be amazed at the crazy NIFC coins that you can find if you are coin roll hunting, or if you search your pocket change. I have found some that have mintage figures as low as $20,000 and can be worth up to $150. And of all the different coin sets released by the Canadian Mint in the last 100 some odd years, this one has probably been cracked open and spent for their face value the most of just about any other coin series. Now, in terms of this coin's value, I do have some price estimates for you guys, and it is much more valuable than the regular issue 1999 September Millennium Series Quarter. If you were to find a regular issue 1999 September Series Millennium Quarter, the most that you could get for it is $25 For an NBU 67, if it scored any higher, you might be able to get a little bit more, maybe $50 to $100 if somebody really wants the coin. Now, the September Mule is another Canadian coin that is extremely rare. There's probably only 100 to 1,000 examples of this coin that exist, and its value does not necessarily represent its rarity. If you were able to find one of these in the wild, it would definitely be a pretty profitable find. Now, the price estimates kick in at NBU 64 for $129, and if you were able to find one of these out of a roll or a proof set and it is in pristine condition, it can be worth around $300 for an NBU 67. So if it scored any higher, you could easily be talking a $1,000 coin. And this is another extremely rare Canadian coin that I believe has some pretty low price estimates, and the potential for its value to increase will only go up as more awareness is drawn to it. Now, once again, just to quickly clarify, if you want to identify this rare mule coin on the 1999 September Millennium Series Quarter, all you need to do is flip over to the obverse of the coin, and if it is missing the wording for 25 cents, then it has the obverse that was intended for the caribou quarters, and you have yourself the mule coin. You might as well check every single Millennium Quarter that you find, because you never know when you might find a one-of-a-kind coin that could be worth some insane money. If you happen to have any old Canadian pennies tucked away in a jar, buried in a desk, or inherited from a relative, now is the time to pull them out and give them a close inspection. Because one incredibly rare piece from the year 1966 can make the difference between a common copper cent worth only a few pennies and one of the rarest finds in all of Canadian numismatics. The mid-60s were a pivotal era for Canadian coins. At the time, the Canadian Mint was moving away from the traditional compositions for the higher denominations, replacing silver with nickel for dimes, quarters, half dollars, and the silver dollar. During this shift, Canadian Mint engineers experimented with new compositions for the Canadian penny, exploring alternatives to the long-standing copper-bronze mix. That is where the 1966 pattern cent or pattern penny comes in. These coins are sometimes referred to as trial or test pieces, and this 1966 nickel penny is referred to as Charlton number DC-32. This coin was struck in nickel, which is a silvery gray metal, unlike the reddish-brown copper alloy used for regular pennies. Its existence captures a pivotal moment when the Canadian Mint was searching for its next generation of coinage. Although this trial piece never progressed to actual circulation, its significance has only grown over time. Finding information on one-of-a-kind rare coins like the 1966 trial or pattern test nickel penny can prove extremely difficult. Today, it's one of the least known test or trial pieces in Canadian numismatics, and only a handful of examples have been found and accounted for, if that. Here's some of the key things that you can look for that might help you spot this rare 1966 pattern penny versus the common copper bronze counterpart. First, the composition and color of the coins is completely different. The regular 1966 Canadian penny is struck in the common 98% copper, 0.5% tin, and 1.5% zinc, which is referred to as bronze. And the pattern 1966 penny is struck in pure nickel. So the easiest way to be able to tell if you have one of these rare pattern cents is to check the composition and the color. If it is the regular 1966 penny, it will be red or brown, and if you have the extremely rare pattern cent, it will appear silver. Another clear difference between the regular 1966 cent and the 1966 pattern nickel penny is the weight. The regular penny will have a weight of 3.24 grams, and the nickel pattern will actually come in slightly heavier at 3.5 grams. Regular 1966 copper pennies will not stick to a magnet, but if you find the 1966 pattern nickel 1 cent coin, it will actually be magnetic, so it will stick to a magnet. So if you are able to find a silver 1966 penny, the second test that you can do is try and see if it will stick to the magnet. So what is it that actually makes this coin so rare and desirable? The 1966 nickel pattern penny emerged from a period when the Canadian Mint was exploring new compositions for its lowest denomination. As higher denomination coins switched to nickel, This pattern penny was an experimental attempt to create a durable and cost-effective Canadian 1 cent coin. However, for reasons lost to history, possibly cost-related, engineering constraints, or public reception, this design and composition never progressed beyond the experimental phase. Today, examples of pattern test or trial coins are exceedingly rare. Based off of similar test, trial, or pattern coins, I would say that there are probably fewer than 5 examples of this piece in existence, if that. This coin's level of rarity, combined with its status as a relic of a pivotal era in Canadian coinage, makes the 1966 pattern penny one of the holy grails for any collector. So if you're like me and you have a big old stash of Canadian pennies from the 1960s, don't dismiss that odd silvery looking coin just yet. Even the most subtle differences, like the coin's magnetic properties, its color, and weight, might signal that you've uncovered one of the rarest and most significant pieces in modern Canadian numismatics. For the right collector, a 1966 nickel pattern penny could be worth thousands of dollars, and its allure goes far beyond its value. It's a piece of the Canadian Mint's experimental past, a relic of a time when every tiny design and material shift could have reshaped the future of Canadian currency. Now, some of the details and specifications of any of these are off and may indicate that it is not a legitimate or authentic example. Online auction sites like Temu and AliExpress are littered with Canadian counterfeit coins, and unfortunately, it's one-of-a-kind pieces like this pattern penny that fall victim to counterfeiting. So it's always important, if you think you have found something unique or special, to do your due diligence to make sure all of the details line up before you take it in to be appraised or send it in to be graded. So the 1966 nickel pattern 1 cent coin is classified as Charlton code DC-32. It has an alloy and composition of nickel, which will give it its silver appearance. It is magnetic, which means it will stick to a magnet, unlike the common copper penny from 1966. It should have a weight of 3.5 grams, which is 0.26 grams more heavy than the common 1966 penny. It will have a diameter of 19.05 millimeters. Now, what do you say we get into the current market values for this extremely rare penny? So if you're able to identify all of those factors and the specifications all line up, if you send this coin in to be graded, it is going to be classified as a specimen coin, as most test, trial, and pattern pieces are. But although they are classed as specimen coins, they actually did not come out of specimen sets. They are patterns, tests, or trials that were struck as an experiment at the mint and were not meant to be released into circulation. So if you're able to find and identify one of these, if it scores around the SP63 mark, which is specimen 63, it can be worth around $1,500. If it scores around SP64, it can be worth around $2,000. And if it scores around SP65, you are looking at around a $2,500 coin, and that is currently the highest appraised price value for this piece. If you did find one and it scored any higher, you could see some little price jumps. We could easily be talking a $3,500, $5,000 coin if it scored in the high SP mark. Now, I do want to point out that your chances of finding coins like this in your pocket change or looking through your coin jars are pretty much slim to nil, but never say never. Some of the rarest coins of all time were discovered through pocket change and coin roll hunting. Even though extremely rare coins like patterns, tests, or trials were not meant to be released into circulation, it doesn't mean that a few of them didn't accidentally escape the mint facility, either snuck out by mint employees, or maybe they made their way into the big batches of pennies that were being struck. Regardless, they have been found and accounted for in the past, and the only way that you will ever be able to find one and make the big bucks is to know what to look for. In the year 1999, to commemorate the establishment of Nunavut, Canada's newest territory, the Canadian government commissioned a special design for the Toonie. Renowned First Nations artist Germain Arnon-Tayok was selected to create this unique design, infusing it with cultural significance and symbolism reflective of Nunavut's heritage. Arnon-Tayok's artistic vision brought to life the essence of Nunavut's founding, celebrating its indigenous culture and the resilience of its people. This commemorative design graced all 1999 $2 coins intended for general circulation, becoming an emblem of Nunavut's identity and historical significance. Depicting motifs inspired by Inuit art tradition, such as Arctic wildlife and cultural symbols, the coin serves as a tangible representation of Nunavut's rich cultural heritage. This special edition of the Toonie held immense significance for Canadians nationwide, marking a milestone in the country's history and recognizing the importance of Indigenous voices and narratives. I actually remember when they first released this commemorative Nunavut Toonie. I was only 9 years old at the time, and it was probably the first commemorative coin that I ever found in my pocket change, and even I didn't know back then that decades later these coins would hold such significance in my own life. It's important to note that in 1999, the iconic polar bear design typically featured on Canadian $2 coins was only available in limited quantities within special coin sets tailored for the collector market. These sets were designed to appeal to numismatists and collectors and offered a unique opportunity to acquire a piece of Canadian history and culture. In the fascinating realm of Canadian numismatics, a remarkable tale unfolds with the 1999 Nunavut Mule Toonie, an air coin that captivates collectors with its unique characteristics and also historical significance. During the minting process of the Nunavut $2 coins, an unusual mishap occurred when the reverse die designated for the striking of proof silver coins was mistakenly employed to produce a portion of regular circulation coins. This unintentional blending of minting processes resulted in the creation of a select number of Nunavut Mule toonies, adding to this intriguing chapter in the denomination's history. Identifying these elusive mule coins requires a keen eye and an understanding of their distinguishing features. Unlike their standard circulation counterparts, Nunavut Mule toonies lack the raised ring around the inner core on the reverse side of the coin. This anomaly is particularly noteworthy given that the Nunavut toonies were struck in both base metals for circulation and precious metals for collectors, with variations in the reverse design. By examining the reverse of the coin closely, you can discern the absence of the raised rim where the ring and insert meet, indicating the coin's status as the Mule variant. Now, the overall mintage for the Canadian 1999 Nunavut Toonie is 25,130,000. Let's take a little look into some of the technical specifications into the coin. It was crafted with an outer ring made of 100% nickel and a core comprising of 92% copper, 6% aluminum, and 2% nickel. It has a weight of 7.3 grams and a diameter of 28 millimeters. The edge of the coin is serrated, which adds to its visual appeal and tactile experience, while the engraved designs on both the obverse and reverse sides showcase the artistic talents of renowned artists Dora DePadre Hunt, Germaine Arnott-Tayuk, and Jose Azio. With an estimated production of approximately 3,000 mule coins, the Nunavut Mule Toonie stands as a rare and coveted treasure within the realm of Canadian numismatics. Its unique status as a handsome mule, coupled with its association within the founding of Nunavut, Canada's newest territory, adds layers of historical significance and cultural resonance. As collectors and enthusiasts alike marvel at these intriguing specimens, each Nunavut Mule Toonie serves as a tangible testament to the intricacies and occasional surprises found within the world of coin minting. Now, once again, to identify this coin, Nunavut Mule Toonies lack the raised ring around the inner core on the reverse side of the coin. By examining the reverse side closely, you can discern the absence of the raised rim where the ring and the insert meet, which will indicate its status as the Mule variant. So what do you say we discuss some of the values for the 1999 Nunavut Toonies? Now, the regular base price for the 1999 Polar Bear out of the proof set, now this is not actually a proof strike, it is just simply a uncirculated set, is worth around $35 for the Polar Bear. That is the more valuable of the regular issues. And then there is the regular issue 1999 Nunavut without any errors or varieties. This is worth around $25 maximum, which isn't too bad. If you're able to score one of these sets for a pretty reasonable price, around $20, and the coins are in impeccable condition, you can still turn a little profit if you send it in to be graded. But then we have the Holy Grail, the Nunavut Mule Toonie, which is quite a bit more valuable than the other two, if I do say so myself. Now, the price estimates kick in for this coin at NBU 64, so it is not a proof-like strike or a proof strike, it is just a business strike that contains this mule air. For an NBU 64, it can be worth around $245. For a 66, it can be worth $318. And for an uncirculated 67, it can be worth around $537. If it did score any higher, a 68 or 69, you could easily be talking a $1,000 coin or more. Now, just to clarify quickly, in the realm of Canadian numismatics, coin sets play a pivotal role in commemorating significant events and celebrating our nation's rich heritage. One notable category within these sets is the NBU, or Brilliant Uncirculated coins. These coins, while not intended for circulation, are struck with the same composition as those produced for general circulation. The only difference is that they are basically packaged meticulously by the mint, but the actual strikes or finishes on these coins are no different than the standard circulation issues. From the moment of their minting, Brilliant Uncirculated set coins are carefully preserved in protective envelopes or the original packaging, which safeguards their luster and ensures their untouched state. However, once removed from these secure confines, distinguishing one of these Brilliant Uncirculated set coins from a circulated business strike becomes a more challenging task, as their identical compositions blur the lines between a numismatic treasure and an everyday currency. The evolution of terminology within the numismatic community sheds light on the significance of these Brilliant Uncirculated set coins. They were initially referred to as proof-like or PL coins, but the term underwent a transformation in the year 1977, with third-party grading companies and other references adopting the NBU designation. This change reflected a broader recognition of the coin's brilliant and uncirculated state, highlighting their value beyond more than currency. So pretty much what I am trying to tell you guys is, if you buy a Canadian proof set after the year 1977, your coins will receive a designation of NBU, meaning Brilliant Uncirculated out of a set. But if you send a pre-1977 coin in to be graded, it will either receive a PL proof-like designation, or if it's a little bit earlier, it might also receive the PR designation, which is the proof designation. The reason that I'm bringing this up is because a lot of these Mule coins will get the NBU designation. They weren't actually produced for general circulation. That doesn't mean that you can't find them in your pocket change, or if you are coin roll hunting. Crazier things have happened, and people have found true gems and one-of-a-kind holy grails before, so it is always good to have these coins on your radar and know what to look for so you don't accidentally let a gem slip back into the wilds of circulation. The Canadian 2009 Olympic Quarter Series is a set of commemorative quarters issued by the Royal Canadian Mint to celebrate the Vancouver 2010 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games. Here's a brief breakdown of the series. The series consists of 17 different designs, each representing a different Olympic sport or Paralympic event. The designs showcase various winter sports such as skiing, snowboarding, hockey, curling, and more. The quarters were released in stages throughout the late 2000s leading up to the Winter Games in 2010. Each design was released individually in limited quantities, adding to their collectability. The mintage for each of the designs varied, with some being more abundant than others. However, overall, the series generated significant interest among collectors due to its unique theme and the limited availability of some of the pieces in the series. Some of the quarters featured colorized elements to enhance the design and highlight specific details of the sports depicted, such as the men's hockey, women's hockey, and Cindy Klassen quarters. These colored versions have a mintage of 3 million each, making them relatively rare by numismatic standards and highly sought after by collectors. Alongside the Olympic-themed quarters, the series also featured designs commemorating the Paralympic Games. These Paralympic quarters celebrate the achievements of para-athletes and highlight the diversity of the winter sports showcased during the Paralympic Winter Games. The inclusion of both Olympic and Paralympic themes in the series adds depth and inclusivity to the overall collection, reflecting Canada's commitment to promoting equality and diversity in sports. The 2007 Alpine Skiing Painted Leaf 25-cent Mule coin presents an intriguing case in the world of numismatics. This particular Mule variety can only be found within special cards issued by Petro-Canada in a number of collector sets. What sets this coin apart is the unconventional use of the 2008 Obverse die instead of the proper 2007 die, resulting in the striking of approximately 40,000 coins with the wrong date of 2008 instead of the intended 2007. Interestingly, despite fitting the definition of a mule coin due to the mismatched dies, a peculiar circumstance arises with this particular variety. While the 2008 dated coins technically qualify as mules, the rarity of the correct 2007 dated coins poses an intriguing conundrum. With only around 900 coins bearing the correct 2007 date compared to the significant larger quantity of mule coins produced, one would expect the mule coins to be less valuable than their correctly dated counterparts. Now, to determine whether your coin is a mule or the regular issue, it is pretty simple. You just need to inspect the obverse side. The normal version will display the date 2007, while the mule variety will show the date 2008. This subtle difference distinguishes between the two varieties and adds a level of allure to collecting these unique pieces. When considering the value of the 2007 Alpine skiing painted leaf 25-cent mule coin, several factors come into play. Despite the larger quantity of mule coins that were produced, the scarcity of the correct 2007 dated coins adds a layer of complexity to their valuation. Collectors often place greater value on coins with a lower mintage figure, such as the correct 2007 dated coins, due to their rarity and desirability. However, the novelty and curiosity surrounding these mule coins can also attract interest from collectors that seek unique and unusual pieces for their collections. So this one really comes down to preference, but it would seem that the more desirable of the two is the mule coin, and chances are if you buy one of these, you are probably going to get the mule. But if you get the regular issue 2007 dated colored Alpine skiing quarter, then you have yourself a coin with a mintage figure of 900 or less. So it's pretty much a win-win scenario either way, whether you are seeking a coin with a very low mintage figure or you are seeking a rare variety to add to your collection. While the mule variety of the 2007 Alpine skiing painted leaf 25-cent coin may seem quite abundant compared to its correct dated counterpart, its value is influenced by several factors, including the rarity of coins, demand from collectors, and also the circumstances of its acquisition, meaning how you actually find the coin. Collectors intrigued by the novelty of mule coins and those seeking to complete their collections with rare varieties may find these coins to be valuable additions, despite the unexpected dynamics surrounding their production and availability. Now, one of these sealed sets typically commands a price of $15 to $30. Now, for this price, you are paying for a single coin, as the colored quarter is the only coin that you receive in this set, and also any accompanying packaging or documentation that they include. So you want to pay as little as possible if you aren't able to actually inspect the set and get a look at the sealed quarter inside the packaging, as anything extra you do pay will be a loss of profit unless you can identify the mule variety and it is also in impeccable condition. Now, if you were able to find and identify the mule in this set, I would suggest leaving it in the set and making sure that it is stored in a safe spot where it can't be affected by light, dust, or any environmental hazards. If you were to find one of these coins outside of the set, or if you are brave enough to crack open the package, you could send it off to be graded at PCGS or ICCS, but you definitely want to make sure that the company you are sending it to will give it the proper attribution you are looking for, but I am pretty sure all the companies will designate mule coins. Now, in terms of this quarter's value, a high-grade example of this mule coin, such as a PL65, which is a proof-like 65 specimen, can significantly increase in value, with an estimated worth of around $50 for a PL65 example. Although this is a recognized variety, not a lot of people know about it, and it currently is flying under the radar a little bit, and I believe some of these estimations on Canadian coins are a little low currently, and as they become more popular and as I make more videos, I'm sure the popularity and values will only increase. So, $50 for a PL65. Now, there is also the grading cost to consider. You're going to be paying anywhere from $15 to $40 to get your coin graded depending on where you send it and where you live, so you have to make sure that the condition of the coin validates the potential value when you pay for the sealed set, and then also for the grading fee after that. If you buy the coin set and then send the coin to be graded all for under $50, then you will most likely make a profit on this coin. But anything you go over that line, it will eat into the potential money that you can make if and when you want to sell the coin. Now, if the mule coin scores higher than a PL65, its value could substantially escalate. In some cases where the coin exhibits exceptional quality, it's not uncommon for its value to soar to the range of $300 to $500 or even higher. Coins graded higher than PL65 are considered exceptional specimens and are highly sought after by serious collectors willing to pay a premium for top quality examples. Overall, the potential value of the 2007 Alpine skiing painted leaf 25-cent mule coin hinges on several factors, including its condition, the grade, and market trends. Collectors interested in acquiring these mule coins should consider these factors when assessing their potential value and investment prospects in the numismatic market. So this coin is classified as a specimen mule, meaning that it comes out of the 2010 Wildlife Specimen Set. The inception of specimen finishes marked a turning point in the world of coin minting, as it elevated the art form to new heights of sophistication and complexity. Each coin meticulously crafted with this finish serves as a testament to the ingenuity and skill of our artisans who meticulously execute every detail with precision and care. From the precisely machined matte lines that form the backdrop to the intricate relief elements brought to life with intricate detailing, each aspect of the specimen finish reflects a commitment to excellence and a dedication to pushing the boundaries of what is possible in coin design. In modern numismatics, specimen coins continue to captivate collectors with their unparalleled beauty and craftsmanship. While the original intent of the finish was to showcase technical capabilities, it has since become synonymous with elegance and refinements in coin design. Today, collectors eagerly anticipate the release of new specimen coins and sets, each offering a unique interpretation of the finish with varying degrees of frosting and texture. From classic designs to innovative motifs, specimen coins continue to inspire awe and admiration among numismatists and collectors worldwide, cementing their status as cherished treasures within any collection. The Canadian 2010 specimen dime presents a fascinating anomaly in the realm of numismatics, known as a reverse handsome mule. This unique variety can only be found within special specimen sets, specifically those containing the Lynx Kittens $2 coins. While these sets were originally intended to showcase the beauty of Canadian wildlife, some specimens deviated from the norm due to a production fault. At some point when the dimes for this set were being struck, instead of featuring the proper 2010 specimen finish obverse die, a 2010 circulation strike obverse die was inadvertently used during the minting process. This unexpected occurrence resulted in the striking of a small number of coins with a mismatched finish, earning them the moniker of reverse handsome mule coins. The combination of a circulation or business strike die on a proof or specimen coin adds an extra layer of intrigue and complexity, making them highly sought after by collectors seeking rare and unusual varieties. Identifying whether your coin is a mule is relatively straightforward. Simply inspect the background of the obverse side. If it exhibits a glossy finish instead of the expected matte finish seen on regular specimen coins, it is likely a mule. This distinct difference in surface texture serves as a telltale sign of the mule variety, distinguishing it from standard counterparts and adding to the allure among collectors. Now, as I mentioned, this is a specimen coin, so your best chance of being able to find one of these mules is going to be pulling it out of the 2010 specimen set, but that doesn't say that you can't ever find one of these in the wild. Who knows if maybe there is another version of this where they accidentally struck some of the business strikes with a specimen finish, so it is always good to have these dates on your radar so you know what to look for. I have found plenty of NIFC coins in some of my coin roll hunts in the past, including specimen and proof coins, and if you were to find a Canadian 10-cent specimen coin from the year 2010, it definitely doesn't hurt to flip it over to the obverse and look for that glossy finish, which would indicate that it was struck with the business strike obverse die, and then you have an extremely rare coin. Now, there are some price evaluations for this piece. It is designated as an SP because it is a specimen coin. The lowest price valuation kicks in at an SP64 for $294. Coins graded SP64 are considered to be in choice uncirculated condition with minor imperfections. Despite these flaws, coins graded SP64 will still maintain strong eye appeal and overall attractiveness to collectors. Now, the next valuation is for an SP65, which is $343. This coin is evaluated at $345 for an SP66, so you're not seeing huge price jumps for this coin as it does increase in the grading tiers, but still this is one that not a lot of people know about and it will definitely see some increase in value over time. Now the maximum appraised value for this coin is $415 for an SP67. It is possible that it could score higher. A lot of modern Canadian coins can score higher than the 67 mark. It is very rare for older Canadian coins to score above either an MS 67, a Proof 67, or a Specimen 67. But modern coins have a lot better of a chance, especially coins like toonies, loonies, and the colored quarters. I have definitely seen some higher graded examples of those. Now $415 for an SP67. For Canadian coins, SP67 basically represents the pinnacle of preservation with virtually no visible imperfections even under magnification. Finding coins in your pocket change with a high grade like this is very uncommon, but when you are pulling a Canadian specimen coin out of a set, they take a lot of care when they're striking the specimen coins at the Canadian Mint. There is definitely an extra level of care when the Canadian Mint produces specimen coins. They probably put them into the sets very carefully, and they probably have extra levels of quality assurance to make sure not too many flaws or errors get out there, even though there are some of these rare mules that have been accounted for. Now your best chance of being able to find the 2010 Mule specimen dime is going to be to pull it out of a fresh 2010 specimen set. If you want to be able to get one of these sets, the best places to find them are probably your local coin shop. You could try eBay, maybe Kijiji, or Facebook Marketplace. You definitely don't want to pay too much for the set, but unfortunately the coins in this set are facing reverse side out, so you will not really be able to scope out if it actually has this mule inside it. It will be a bit of a gamble. But if you are able to score one of these sets for a reasonable price, you may be able to turn a profit. Even if it doesn't have the Mule specimen dime, it does have a unique Toonie with a unique design. And I know people definitely want this Toonie for their collections. So being able to buy one of these sets and finding this Mule dime would just be a little cherry on top bonus. Now, once again, very quickly, to be able to identify the 2010 specimen mule coin, what you want to do is look at the reverse, and it will have the typical specimen finish, meaning it will be grainy and matte. Then you want to flip over to the obverse of the coin, and it will be shiny and glossy, which is typical of the business or circulation strikes. During the Second World War, nickel became a precious metal and a critical resource for Canada's war effort. This led to an innovative shift in the production of Canadian 5-cent coins, as the Royal Canadian Mint sought alternatives to preserve the valuable metal. This resulted in a fascinating chapter in Canadian numismatic history that gave rise to the iconic Tombac and chrome-plated Victory nickels. In 1942, Canadian nickels took on a dramatic transformation. With nickel reserved for military use, the Canadian Mint turned to a brass alloy called Tombac. To distinguish these yellow tone nickels from the similarly colored 1-cent pieces, they were given a distinctive 12-sided or dodecagonal shape, which was a first in Canadian coinage. At first, the coins retained the traditional reverse beaver design in 1942, but were set to undergo a patriotic makeover in the years that followed. From 1943 to 1945, the reverse design for Canadian nickels was updated to feature a bold V, symbolizing both the coin's value, which is 5 cents in Roman numerals, and also the wartime spirit for victory in World War II. Surrounding this iconic design, the rim beads were replaced with Morse code, which actually spells out the message, "We win when we work willingly." This design was a rallying cry for Canadians, reminding them of their contributions to the Allied war effort. Thomas Shingles, an iconic engraver who joined the Canadian Mint in 1939, meticulously hand-cut the master matrix for this design, marking the first time a Canadian coin was entirely designed, engraved, and struck within the country. The historic matrix is now preserved and on loan to the National Currency Collection at the Bank of Canada in Ottawa. The 1944 Tombac nickel is one of the rarest and most intriguing coins from this era. While Tombac was predominantly used in the years 1942 and 1943 for Canadian nickels, a small batch of approximately 8,000 coins were produced in 1943 in Tombac, but were accidentally dated 1944. This is according to the Royal Canadian Mint's 1944 report. Of these 8,000 coins, only one example is known to currently exist today. It is certified as a VF35 by PCGS, and this coin sold for $52,000 at Heritage Auctions in 1999. It reappeared briefly in 2018 with an asking price of hundreds of thousands of dollars, but remained unsold. Now, some of the histories and origins of how this rare and legendary nickel came into existence. By 1944, the Mint began experimenting with the chromium-plated steel to further conserve precious materials. These coins featured the same iconic Victory design, but had a shiny chrome finish. A small number of 1944 and 1945 nickels were actually not chrome-plated, resulting in a duller appearance, and these are generally much more rare and valuable. While these missing chrome varieties do exist, grading services no longer officially recognize them due to the possibility of chemicals removing the plating. Canadian World War II nickels are more than just currency. They are symbols of Canada's resourcefulness and resilience during a time of global conflict. From their striking designs to their historical significance, these coins remain a favorite among collectors and embody a unique blend of artistry, patriotism, and wartime necessity. The 1944 Canadian Tombac is one of the most elusive and intriguing pieces in Canadian numismatics. With only one known example currently in existence, this coin remains a mystery to collectors and researchers alike. Its origins are surrounded by speculation and mystery, and its rarity makes it a highly coveted piece for those who can appreciate its historical significance. Now, there are two competing theories about how this legendary and unique coin came into existence. According to the Royal Canadian Mint's 1944 report, approximately $400 worth of Tombac 5-cent coins, which is roughly equivalent to 8,000 pieces, were struck in 1943 but accidentally dated 1944. Before these coins could be released into circulation, the Mint decided to switch to steel planchettes with nickel and chromium plating. As a result, nearly all of the 8,000 coins were melted down, leaving only one surviving specimen. This theory suggests that the coin was part of an intended issue that was ultimately scrapped. However, the whereabouts of the other 7,999 coins are currently unknown, and no other authentic examples have surfaced since the Michigan dealer John Abbott purchased his example at a 1982 auction. Another possible theory, which is supported by Canadian numismatic researchers Robert Aaron and Dr. James Haxby, proposes that the 1944 Tombac nickel was never an officially planned issue. Instead, it may have been a mint error that was struck on leftover Tombac planchettes that were mistakenly mixed in with steel planchettes during the production process. This theory aligns with observations of the coin's grade of a VF30, which indicates significant circulation wear. If the coin had been an intentional issue, it would have likely been preserved in mint condition by collectors. Its circulated state suggests that it was released into circulation accidentally, where it was used as ordinary currency, which is actually a really good sign for us because it means that a few more of these could have accidentally escaped into circulation as well. Now, identifying this unique coin involves several key features. The 1944 Tombac nickel shares the same composition as its 1942 and 1943 counterparts. It's made of the distinctive Tombac alloy, which is a brass-like metal and weighs 4.55 grams. These properties distinguish it from the lighter steel-based nickels which were produced later in 1944 and onwards. The coin bears the date of 1944 and will feature the iconic V or Victory design with the Roman numeral of 5 in the center of the reverse. Its design is identical to other Victory nickels, and it only stands apart due to its unique Tombac composition. This coin will have a yellowish hue, which will be characteristic of Tombac nickels, and it will lack the reflective surface typical of chromium-plated steel nickels. The duller appearance is a distinguishing feature of this coin. With only one example known to exist, the 1944 Tombac nickel is considered the rarest regular issue Canadian coin. Its unique status and mysterious origins have made it a subject of fascination in numismatic circles. The coin was last sold in the year 1999 for $52,000, but could easily command a much higher price today if it were to reappear in the market. Whether it was a planned issue or an accidental mint error, the 1944 Tombac nickel remains a testament to the challenges and ingenuity of the Canadian Mint during a time of global conflict. Until another example is discovered, this coin will continue to captivate collectors and stand as a symbol of Canadian numismatic history. Now, some of the details and specifications of any of these are off and may indicate that it is not an authentic example. The mintage figure for the 1944 Tombac is 8,000, but as was mentioned earlier, we do not know how many exactly survived. It is estimated that a good portion of them were melted down or destroyed. It is composed of a Tombac alloy. The coin is non-magnetic. It should have a weight of 4.54 grams, a diameter of 21.3 millimeters. The edge should be 12-sided or dodecagonal. The axis should be in metal alignment, which is the standard for Canadian, British, and Australian coins. The obverse of the coin was designed and engraved by Thomas Humphrey Paget, and the reverse by Thomas Shingles. Now, in terms of this coin's current value, the last time that it sold was in the year 1999. When it sold for $52,000, the coin went up for auction again in the year 2018, and the lister tried to sell it for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it actually did not sell. But currently the price is evaluated somewhere around $88,000, and the only one that is known and accounted for is graded VF35, which is pretty beat up and worn. If you were ever to find one of these and it scored any higher than that, you could easily be talking hundreds of thousands of dollars for this piece. The 1967 Canadian Bobcat Quarter is a remarkable coin for collectors, not only for its stunning design by renowned Canadian artist Alex Colville, but also for the fascinating minting error that led to the creation of the extremely rare nickel versions. Originally, the entire mintage run of the 1967 Bobcat Quarters was intended to be struck in either 50% silver and 50% copper, or 80% silver and 20% copper, or 0.50 and 0.80. This adjustment in the metal composition was part of a broader effort by the Canadian Mint to prepare for a transition to nickel coinage, which aimed at reducing the cost of producing higher denomination coins for the dimes, quarters, half dollars, and silver dollars. However, during this busy period, which involved the production of commemorative coins for Canada's centennial, a small batch of nickel planchets, which were typically reserved for the future coin denominations, were accidentally used to strike some of these 25-cent Bobcat quarters. This mix-up resulted in the creation of one of the rarest Canadian coins in existence, the 1967 nickel Bobcat quarter. Numismatists believe that only 5 to 10 examples of this extremely rare coin still exist, making it an extraordinarily sought-after item for collectors. A certified example of one of these, graded SP64, which is Specimen 64 by PCGS, sold in auction for a staggering $3,000 US in the year 2019, solidifying its status as one of Canada's most valuable air coins. Now, given this piece's extreme rarity, knowing how to identify one of these coins is incredibly important if you want to be able to make the big bucks. So here's what you should look for. First, you want to perform the magnet test. The simplest and most effective way to determine whether you have a nickel or silver 1967 Bobcat quarter is to perform a magnet test. Silver is non-magnetic, so if your 1967 Bobcat quarter does not stick to a magnet, you likely have a silver version. Now, on the other hand, if the 1967 Bobcat quarter sticks to the magnet, it is likely the extremely rare nickel version of this coin. You also want to look for visual differences. Nickel coins tend to have a duller appearance compared to their silver counterparts. The silver Bobcat quarters, whether they're 50 or 80% silver, generally exhibit a more lustrous or shiny finish, especially in higher grade or well-preserved states. The nickel version of this coin, by contrast, may appear more dull and lack the same level of reflection that is characteristic of the silver coins. This very subtle difference in appearance can provide additional clues when identifying one of these coins. You then also want to do the weight test. While this might not be immediately obvious to the naked eye, the difference in metal composition between nickel and silver affects the weight of this coin. A 1967 quarter made of silver will actually weigh slightly more than the rare nickel version. If you have a scale, compare the weight of your Bobcat quarter to the standard weights for a silver version, and if there is a difference in weights, then you may have the rare version. I will actually go over the exact weights of the silver and nickel versions later on in this video. You can also perform a ping test. For silver Bobcat quarters, distinguishing between the 50 and 80% silver versions is a bit tricky. One tried and true method is the ping test, which involves gently tapping the coin to produce a sound. Silver coins emit a clear, ringing tone when they are struck, and the pitch may vary slightly depending on the silver content of the coin. The higher silver content in the 80% quarters should produce a longer, more resonant ping compared to the 50% silver variety, which may produce a slightly duller or short tone. Collectors will often use this method as an alternative to using expensive silver testing machines. Now you can also get your coin professionally tested. If you're serious about determining whether you have a nickel Bobcat quarter, and if you want to know the exact silver composition of one of your 1967 regular silver Bobcat quarters, a more definitive option is to use a precious metal testing machine. These devices, typically used by professional coin graders or bullion dealers, can accurately determine the metal composition for your coin. However, these machines are quite expensive, which makes them impractical for casual collectors. For anybody that finds one of these rare coins and is wondering where to sell it, or they can get it identified or appraised, one thing you can do is look up your local coin shops in your area and maybe take it in and get an opinion. I wouldn't do this for any coin that you find, but if you find something that you believe is truly a holy grail, then it probably is worth getting a second opinion, because you don't want to accidentally throw something that's worth thousands of dollars back into the wilds of circulation. Beyond the intrigue of this rare minting error, the 1967 Canadian Centennial coins are highly significant in Canadian history. They're created in celebration of Canada's 100th anniversary of Confederation. The government commissioned special designs for each of the denominations, from the penny all the way through to the silver dollar. The eventual designs were the result of an open competition to Canadian artists with the intent of showcasing national pride and the country's natural wildlife. Alex Colville, a renowned artist from Sackville, New Brunswick, was chosen to design all 6 of the 1967 reverse designs. Each design featured a different Canadian animal, which symbolized the natural beauty and strength of our country. The Bobcat, which was featured on the 25-cent coin, is meant to embody agility, independence, and fierceness. The obverse of this coin retains the familiar portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, which was designed by Arnold Machen. The combination of Alex Colville's wildlife depictions with Arnold Machen's regal portrait creates a coin that remains beloved by collectors, not just for its beauty, but for its deep historical meaning. Because of the extremely limited number of these 1967 nickel Bobcat quarters in existence, these coins are considered the holy grail for many coin collectors. Even for those who don't possess the nickel version, the 1967 silver Bobcat quarter still remains a fairly decent find due to its connection with Canada and also its silver content. Even if you do happen to find one of these silver 1967 Bobcat quarters in your pocket change, I would still definitely hold on to it, because silver coins are generally worth more than their clad counterparts, and you can usually sell them for a couple dollars, and collectors covet these things both for the design and also for their silver content. Whether you find one of these Bobcat quarters coin roll hunting, at a flea market, or in your family coin collection, you're holding a valuable and historic piece of numismatic art, and if you happen to find one with the nickel composition, you are holding a true Canadian Holy Grail coin. Now, before we get into the values for these nickel Bobcat quarters, some of the details and specifications of any of these are off and may indicate that you do not have a legitimate example. First, I'm going to discuss the details and specifications for the regular silver issues of the 1967 Bobcat quarters. The overall mintage for the 1967 Bobcat quarter is 48,855,500, and that includes both the 80% and 50% silver compositions. They will be non-magnetic if they are composed of silver. The silver versions will have a weight of 5.83 grams, a diameter of 23.88 millimeters. The edge will be reeded, they will have a diaxis and metal alignment as is the standard for most Canadian, British, and Australian coins. The obverse was designed and engraved by Arnold Mockin and the reverse by Alex Colville. Now, the details and specifications for the Holy Grail nickel composition 1967 Bobcat quarter. It is designated with a code DC34. It has a composition of nickel. It should be magnetic. It has a lower weight of 5.07 grams as opposed to the 5.83 grams of the silver version. So that is one of the differentiating factors, is the lower weight. The nickel version should have a diameter of 23.62 millimeters, which is slightly lower than the silver version. Its diaxis will be in metal alignment. The obverse was designed by Arnold Mockin and the reverse by Alex Colville. Now, if you were to find one of the nickel versions of these coins and send it into a grading company, it would be designated with a specimen designation, meaning it will get an SP. Now, because this coin gets an SP designation, it means more than likely it is a pattern or test piece. So when they actually made this coin, they probably only made a few of them, and they were testing out the nickel planchettes because they're going to be implementing them in the next couple years for general circulation. So either the mint made a few of these as a pattern or test, or a few nickel planchettes accidentally slipped into the presses when they were making the 1967 Bobcat quarters. But if you do send one of these in to be graded with the nickel composition, it will get an SP designation. Now, in terms of value, if you find a regular 1967 specimen Bobcat quarter, just to give you guys a comparison, it can be worth around $50 on the high end if you find one that's in incredible condition. Now, if you find one that is composed of nickel, it can be worth around $3,000 for an SP62. If you find one that's pretty beat up and worn, you're probably still going to get at least $500 to $1,000 for it. The fact that there are only a few known examples adds to the value and rarity of this coin, and people will want them even if it's an extremely worn example. Now, on the high end, it can be worth around $7,000 currently for an SP64 example. If you were to find one and it graded any higher, you could see some massive price jumps. You could easily be talking a $15,000 to $20,000 coin. This is one of the rarest Canadian quarters that you can find still in your pocket change. There have been 4 or 5 accounted for, but that doesn't mean that there still aren't a few floating out there. So definitely keep your eyes on your pocket change, or if you are coin roll hunting, because you never know if you are holding a coin that is only worth 25 cents or $25,000. During the year 1967, the rising price of silver forced a reduction in the silver content in Canadian 10 and 25 cent coins from 80% to 50%, although some coins were still minted in 80% during 1967. The two different compositions of the Canadian 1967 coins are not distinguishable by eye. 1967 and 1968 are transitional years for the amount of silver commonly used in Canadian coins, and the composition was eventually changed to pure nickel in the year 1968, with around a third of the dimes and quarters being produced and composed of 50% silver for that final year. The transition from silver to nickel composition in Canadian coins during the years 1967 and 1968 was a significant change in the country's currency. This shift marked a move towards a more cost-effective and durable material for coin production, ultimately impacting the value and collectability of these coins for numismatists. In the year 1967, the Canadian Mint made commemorative designs for each of the different denominations, and although they are incredibly beautiful and the dimes and quarters are silver, they usually aren't worth too much money. But believe it or not, there is an incredibly rare dime that has flown under the radar of most collectors, and it is found on the 1967 Mackerel dime. In the year 1967, the Canadian Mint began preparations for the switch to the nickel composition for its coinage the following year. This was a very experimental time at the Canadian Mint, and there was also a heavy workload as the full run of 1967 commemorative coinage was no doubt a huge undertaking at the time, and some of the coins in the series, such as the Rock Dove penny, had very large mintage figures, so it would have definitely been a strain on Mint employees. Now, let's briefly discuss pattern or trial coins. Most pattern essays or trial coins were not officially approved for release, but produced to evaluate a proposed coin design, a new or revised coinage, or to test the metal composition, dyes, or structure of a new coin. And when it comes to pattern, trial, and essay coins, usually there will only be a few known examples of the piece, if any, and they usually don't leave the mint facility unless intended, and they are quickly snatched up, graded, and accounted for. I don't want to say that there's a 0% chance that you will ever stumble across one of these in the wild, but if you were, it would definitely be a gift from the coin gods. The thing that makes this coin great, as opposed to some other eras and varieties, is how easy it would be to identify. Silver coins are non-magnetic and nickel coins will stick to a magnet. The thing that makes this 1967 Mackerel trial piece so special is that it is actually composed of nickel instead of all the other Mackerel dimes which were made of silver that year. This is most likely the result of experimentation by the Canadian Mint to test nickel planchettes, or maybe they planned on releasing some of the commemorative coins in nickel as well, but regardless, it's another great legendary coin to have on your radar. If you do ever happen to have a 1967 Mackerel dime that appears like it may not be silver or has a more dull tone, all you have to do is hit it with a magnet, and if it sticks, you have one of the rarest Canadian dimes in existence. Another identifying factor that makes this coin different from its silver counterparts is its weight. This nickel planchet pattern will weigh 2.1 grams, and the silver mackerels should weigh 2.33 grams. There are actually a few other similar cases of coins where the Canadian Mint will experiment and these holy grail pieces are born. One other good example would be the 1967 Bobcat quarter, which is pretty much the exact same case as this dime. It was a pattern or trial piece struck on a nickel planchet, and it can be worth some really good money as well. Some of the details and specifications for this coin: the overall mintage for the 1967 Mackerel dime is 32,309,135. The trial pattern piece is composed of 99% nickel. It has a weight of 2.1 grams, a diameter of 18.03 millimeters. It is magnetic. The face value is 10 cents, and it is in metal alignment, as is the standard for most Canadian coins. Now that we've discussed some of the history and how to identify this coin, what do you say we get into the value of this extremely rare piece of Canadian numismatic history? If you were to ever send this coin in to be graded, it would be classified as a specimen and get an SP designation, as that is the designation most Canadian pattern or trial coins will receive. So as I mentioned earlier on, there are only a few known examples currently for this coin. If you were to find one and it scored an SP63, it would be worth around $3,000. It can be worth around $4,000 for an SP64, and this bad boy can be worth all the way up to $5,000 for an SP65, which, as far as I can tell, is the highest graded known example currently. If you were to ever find one and it scored any higher, you would probably see some pretty big price jumps, and I would not doubt that the price of this coin starts to double, and if it hits around an SP67, it could easily be worth anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000. So even though there is not too many of these known to exist, and very few of them probably left the mint facility, it is definitely still a good one to have on your radar. I have found 1967 Mackerel dimes coin roll hunting and in my pocket change before. They are still out there in the wild, and you can definitely fish them out if you keep your eyes open. Canadian pattern or trial coins are special and unique coins that are created by the Canadian Mint during the design and production process of new currency or coinage changes. They serve as prototypes or test pieces to evaluate various aspects of the coin, including design, metal composition, weight, and durability. These coins are not usually intended for general circulation, but are instead produced for internal purposes and to assess how new coinage will perform. So how do pattern or trial coins come into existence? Well, it begins with the design phase, where artists and engravers create the initial coin design. This design may undergo several revisions to ensure that it meets artistic, historical, and also technical standards. The Canadian Mint experiments with different metal compositions to assess their durability for circulation. This involves variations in the alloy mix and also the surface finishes, such as matte or proof-like. Once a design and metal composition are selected, a small number of trial coins are minted using specialized equipment. These coins then undergo rigorous quality control to ensure that they meet the mint standards. The trial coins are then subjected to extensive testing, including durability assessments and also wear resistance checks. This step is crucial to ensure that the new coinage will withstand the demands of circulation. Mint officials and experts review the trial coins and assess whether they meet all necessary criteria. Any adjustments or modifications are made as needed, and after approval, the mint can proceed with mass production of the approved coin design, which eventually enters general circulation. Now, what is the possibility of finding these coins in your pocket change? While the chance of finding Canadian pattern or trial coins in your pocket change is exceedingly rare, these coins are never intended for general circulation, and they are usually retained by the Canadian Mint for reference purposes, archive collections, or occasionally offered to collectors during special events. Collectors, numismatists, and historians are the primary seekers of Canadian pattern and trial coins. These coins hold significant historical and numismatic value due to their unique designs, metal composition, and also the insights they offer into the coinage development process. If you ever come across a coin that looks unusual or different from standard circulation coins, it's at least worth having examined by an expert or professional numismatist, as it could potentially be a rare pattern or trial coin. In the year 1936, following the death of King George V, the Canadian Mint decided to change the reverse designs for all of the Canadian coin denominations except for the half dollar and the dollar. The Mint also needed to create coinage that featured the new monarch King George VI portrait. Renowned Canadian coin designer Thomas Shingles was tasked with creating these new designs. For the obverse of the coin, Thomas Shingles crafted a portrait of King George VI. This portrait had to be both artistically compelling and representative of the new monarch. It went through several iterations and reviews before being finalized. Simultaneously, new reverse designs for various denominations were also being developed. These new reverse designs aim to depict Canadian symbols, flora, and fauna. For example, the nickel featured a beaver and the quarter a caribou. These designs aim to celebrate Canada's natural heritage. Once the designs were finalized, trial coins were minted for testing and review. These trial coins went through rigorous quality control and assessments to ensure that they met both artistic and technical standards. Creating an accurate and detailed portrait of King George VI was a challenge. His likeness had to be both faithful to the king's image and artistically appealing. Achieving this balance required great skill. Transitioning from one set of coin designs to another on a large scale was logistically challenging. The Canadian Mint had to retool its machinery and processes to accommodate the new designs efficiently. There was a concern that the public might not immediately recognize the new designs, leading to confusion in everyday transactions. To address this, educational campaigns were launched to familiarize Canadians with the new coins. Coin collectors and numismatists alike eagerly awaited these new designs. The Canadian Mint had to ensure that these collectors had access to the new coins while maintaining adequate supplies for everyday circulation. The transition itself was of historical significance, marking the change in Canadian monarchy from King George V to King George VI. This transition was documented and commemorated on some coins. The process of transitioning Canadian coin designs from King George V to King George VI in 1936 to 1937 involved meticulous design work, rigorous testing, and adjustments to production processes. Challenges included ensuring the accuracy of the king's portrait, preparing for mass production, and also educating the public about the new designs. This transition not only affected the aesthetics of Canadian coins, but also marked an important moment in Canadian history. So during this experimental and tumultuous time at the Canadian Mint, several trial pieces were issued for all of the denominations except for the dollar. It's very interesting to note the composition change the Mint was testing for the new circulation coinage, as well as a different orientation for the die axis. Canadian coins will usually come in metal alignment, meaning the obverse and reverse are both lined up facing the same way. When these test pieces were being issued, with the exception of a test quarter that was kept in metal alignment, all of the other denominations were struck in coin alignment, meaning the obverse and reverse were rotated 180 degrees. This could have been in an attempt to make Canadian coinage more similar to our American coin neighbors to the south. Coins in the United States are typically struck in coin alignment, and after Canada changed the 1 and 5 cent coins to nearly identical size and specs to their American counterparts, it wouldn't surprise me if they were experimenting with changing the die axis as well to be more similar to United States coinage. By doing this, it would have somewhat set a standard for North American coins, but eventually Canada decided to keep our coins in metal alignment, which was more in keeping with British and Australian coinage. So all of that being said, what do you say we get into the value and specifications for these Holy Grail trial or pattern coins? As I mentioned earlier, chances are that not too many of these, if any, made it out of the mint. And if they did make it out, it was most likely by accident or because they were smuggled out of the mint. But just because there are only a few known examples of a coin doesn't mean there aren't any of that piece in circulation. If you look at the 1943 and 1944 copper and steel Lincoln cents, hundreds of those coins were produced, some even at different mint locations, and the United States Mint is not any more renowned for their quality control than the Canadian Mint. So if legendary pennies like those can slip through the cracks and make their way into our pocket change, I don't see any reason why these coins couldn't be discovered one day as well. So I'm going to go through each of the coins and give you the specs because they are a little different for each of the different denominations. You definitely want to do your due diligence and make sure all of these specs are bang on, and if any of them are not, then it may not be legitimate. You might ask why someone would counterfeit coins like this, but if you go on sites like Wish or eBay and some of the online shopping marketplaces, you can find oodles of different counterfeit coins from every country and walk of life, and usually, to be honest, it will be coins like these that will be the most reproduced. So first, I will give you guys the specifications, and then I will give you the value for each of the denominations as we go through. So first is the 1937 trial or pattern 1 cent coin. Now this coin is composed of brass. It has a weight of 3.1 grams, a diameter of 19.1 millimeters. The die axis is in coin alignment, and all of these coins will receive SP grades, which is the specimen designation. Even though they are trial or pattern pieces, they are not intended for circulation, so that is why they are given the specimen grade. But in terms of value, this is an incredibly rare coin that can be worth up to $20,000 for an SP65 example. Next up, we have the 1937 5 cent trial or pattern piece. This coin is composed of brass. It has a weight of 4.98 grams, a diameter of 21.5 millimeters. The die axis is in coin alignment. In terms of value, you're going to find a lot of these coins have very similar values. They can all be worth around $10,000 for an SP62 example, so probably around $5,000 for an SP60, but it can be worth all the way up to $20,000 for an SP65 example, and that is for the 1937 5 cent pattern piece. Next up, we have the 1937 10 cent pattern or trial coin. It is composed of brass. It has a weight of 2.46 grams, a diameter of 18.3 millimeters. The die axis is in coin alignment, and in terms of value, it can be worth around $10,000 for an SP62 and all the way up to $20,000 for an SP65. Now, in the year 1937, they actually issued two different trial or pattern coins for the Canadian 25 cent piece. One of them is in coin alignment, another is in metal alignment, and they are actually composed of different alloys as well. Now, first we'll start off with the 25 cent pattern or trial that is coded DC22. It is composed of brass. It has a weight of 6.1 grams, a diameter of 23.9 millimeters. The edge of the coin is reeded, and it has a die axis in coin alignment, just like the other patterns or trials that we covered previously. In terms of value, this one is pretty similar to the other ones on the list. It can be worth around $10,000 for an SP62 and all the way up to $20,000 for an SP65 example. And then we have the second variation of the 25 cent pattern trial piece from 1937. This one is coded DC24. It is actually composed of bronze. The other one was composed of brass. This one has an alloy composition of bronze. It has a weight of 5.5 grams, a diameter of 23.6 millimeters. The edge of the coin is reeded. Now, something very interesting to note is that the die axis for this quarter is actually in metal alignment, as is the standard for most Canadian coins and also British and Australian. So that is how you tell this one apart. This is the DC24 variant. And in terms of value, it has just about the same value as all of the other coins on this list, worth around $10,000 for an SP62 and all the way up to $20,000 for an SP65. And then we come to the last of these holy grail SA, pattern, or trial coins, whatever you like to refer to them as. They can get any of those designations or labels, but this is the 50-cent piece, and it is the most valuable and also rarest of the bunch. Now, the 50-cent 1937 pattern SA or trial coin is composed of brass. It has a weight of 14.9 grams, a diameter of 30 millimeters. The edge of the coin is reeded. The die axis is in coin alignment. And in terms of value, this one can be worth around $40,000 for an SP63 and all the way up to $60,000 for an SP65. So worth about 3 times as much as the other denominations. This is the one that you want to look for, but unfortunately, 50-cent coins are not circulated here in Canada anymore. The only way that you can ever really get them from the bank is if somebody turns them in and then you get lucky and go there on the day or maybe week that somebody turned them in and the tellers are nice enough to turn them over to you. And then the chances of having one of these holy grail coins inside of that bag is pretty much slim to nil, but never say never. Crazier things have happened. And if you keep your eyes open and you know what to look for, your chances of being able to find and identify these coins is definitely a lot better than not knowing anything about them or having them on your radar. But what do you guys think about these Canadian trial or pattern coins from 1937? What would you do if you ever found a legitimate example, or if you ever have found any coins similar to the ones discussed in this video? Let me know down in the comments. I would love to know. Also, I would really appreciate if you guys would smash that thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and also ring that bell notification so you can stay up to date with my new content. But I think that is pretty much going to do it for this one, folks. So until the next one, everybody, peace out and have a good one, y'all.